I mean, like my main takeaway from that, and especially like talking to the booking agent and stuff, is he was like, yo, like most people are like less loud about this than your audience has been. But basically, they're just canceling live podcasts left and right. Like, you know, it's like something that people were really excited about in 2021, 2022, et cetera. But it's just kind of, I don't know. I felt like people got a taste for it. They went to a lot of live podcasts and then they just kind of got over it. Now, like comedy still does really well, I feel like. But as far as like the live podcast thing, I'm not gonna lie. Like people saw how much seeming momentum there was around the Tuesday show for a while there. Like they were really enjoying the Anne Hefe, Munchie, Spody, and Lush and Me vibe. And we promoted the live show for like 3 weeks and sold 30 tickets.
Yeah.
And that was kind of shocking to me. A little bit of an epiphany, which is kind of like the realization, and probably a lot of people will think that this is really obvious, but the realization that building podcasts where the primary hosts are gang members who don't necessarily have a lot of like business experience or broadcast experience, etc., is kind of like, the more that you do that, the more that you're kind of building the podcast on a little bit of shaky ground.
Wait, that was the epiphany that you just had?
Like, and that would probably be like really obvious to people who aren't in the space at all.
It's elevating and growing in the space, but it's like a certain understanding that you have to have when you're dealing in that energy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, like my intention going forward is just to be, you know, both of those are great examples. The Brick and DW thing, and then the sort of introducing J Hood to the Munchie and Spody dynamic or whatever is like, I just feel like
it's like your foot. Boom.
Yeah, well, it's not that I'm gonna like totally shy away from doing content with dudes who are from gangs or whatever.
No, because like, that's a part of the world. This is a real thing.
But I'm gonna mind the ratio a lot more intentionally going forward, just because I feel like the sort of mix that has always made No Jumper work in people's minds is kind of like the mix of the hipster type dude, and obviously there's a lot of different levels to that, and then like a more street type personality. You know, I think that our audience likes to.
Adam22 just got caught trying to quietly walk away from the exact content strategy that built his second wind in podcasting, and the internet is not letting him spin it as some kind of personal growth moment. We've got a live show that reportedly sold around 30 tickets despite millions of followers across platforms. We've got other podcasters publicly clowning him for it, and we've got Adam22 himself on someone else's show trying to explain it away as an epiphany. Today, we're breaking down what actually happened, why the gang-affiliated content strategy stopped working, and why this moment matters for where No Jumper goes from here. Let's get into it. For anyone who doesn't follow this space closely, Adam22, real name Adam Grandmeister, built No Jumper into one of the biggest hip-hop interview podcasts on YouTube, with billions of total video views over the years. He started in BMX media, pivoted into underground rap interviews, and built a reputation for getting access to artists other outlets couldn't reach. Over the past few years, though, a noticeable chunk of his content shifted towards guests directly connected to gang culture, bringing on rappers and personalities with documented gang affiliations, leaning into the lingo and dynamics of that world on camera, sometimes even setting up confrontations between guests with real beef on camera for content. It got views, it got attention. It also got increasingly controversial because real-world consequences started following the content. This is where it stopped being just edgy podcast content and started attracting real legal and safety scrutiny. No Jumper has been connected in coverage to the federal RICO case against rapper and alleged gang figure Big U, with reports that federal officials reached out to Adam22 in connection with that investigation, something he's addressed publicly, saying he wasn't personally arrested, but that officials did want information from him. On top of that, there's a separate lawsuit filed in 2025 by a man named Jeremel Reed, alleging he was assaulted at the No Jumper studio during a confrontation involving a guest and another industry figure, claiming the studio's owner failed to provide any real security despite repeatedly bringing in guests in situations that predictably escalated. And according to people who've worked around the show, multiple cast members and recurring guests from that gang content era have either been arrested, gone to federal custody, or otherwise dealt with serious legal trouble since appearing on the platform. So this wasn't just a creative choice that got stale, it was a strategy that kept generating real-world fallout alongside the views. Here's where the story actually breaks into the open. According to a conversation Adam22 had on a podcast appearance discussing his own booking experiences, his team promoted a live show for around 3 weeks, and it reportedly sold somewhere around 30 tickets total. For context, he's described having millions of combined followers across Instagram and YouTube. 30 tickets after weeks of promotion with that kind of following is a number that's almost impossible to spin as a normal fluctuation. On that same appearance, he described having something of a realization that building a show around guests who are primarily known for gang affiliation rather than business or broadcast experience puts the whole project on, in his words, fundamentally shaky ground. He talked about wanting to recalibrate going forward, leaning back toward the mix of personalities that built No Jumper's original audience in the first place, while saying he wasn't going to abandon that kind of content entirely since it's part of the culture he covers. And that's exactly where other commentary channels jumped in, because the framing of epiphany did not land well with people who've been critical of this content strategy for a long time. Several reaction creators pointed out that this isn't some sudden realization. Critics have been saying for years that building a show around unscripted conflict with people from volatile situations was a recipe for exactly this kind of blowback, both legally and commercially. The criticism also got personal and pointed. Commentators brought up that Adam22 has previously mocked other artists publicly over their streaming numbers and ticket sales, which made the 30-ticket story land even harder once it became public. The general sentiment from competing channels was that he doesn't get to frame backing away from this content as some kind of moral evolution, when the much simpler explanation is that the audience engagement data forced his hand. Engagement was down, ticket sales were embarrassing, and several people connected to that content era had landed in serious legal trouble. This is really the central tension of the whole story, and it's worth sitting with honestly. Adam22 has framed the shift as recognizing the content put the show on unstable ground. His critics are framing it as a financial retreat dressed up as growth. Realistically, it's probably both, and that's not actually contradictory. Plenty of business pivots get triggered by a bad outcome and then get reframed afterwards as principled decisions. That's a pretty normal pattern in media generally, not unique to him. What makes this version stand out is the specificity of the failure. A vague drop in engagement is easy to spin. A live show that sells 30 tickets after 3 weeks of promotion with millions of followers behind it is a number that's almost impossible to attach a flattering narrative, which is exactly why other creators jumped on it so fast. There's also a wider industry context here worth mentioning, because Adam22 isn't the only one dealing with this. Multiple people in the podcasting space have talked about a broader cool-down in live podcast attendance compared to 2021 and 2022 when the format was newer and audiences were more eager to pay for in-person versions of shows they already watched for free. That novelty has worn off across the board, and now live shows are reportedly succeeding mainly for hosts with either a strong comedy chops or a specific kind of mainstream crossover appeal. So some of this isn't unique to No Jumper's gang content strategy specifically. It's part of a broader shift in what audiences are willing to pay for. But that context doesn't fully explain a number as low as 30 tickets for a show with that size of following, which is why the gang content explanation still carries real weight in this specific case. So where does this actually leave the show? Adam22 has indicated he wants to shift the ratio of content back to more of the mix that built the channel's reputation in the first place, while not eliminating that world from the show entirely, since he's described it as a real part of the culture he covers. Whether audiences actually respond to that adjustment is a separate question from whether he intends to make it. Pivots like this often take months to show up in real engagement numbers, and there's also the matter of trust. Once an audience feels like a creator burned out a strategy and now is reverse engineering a redemption narrative around it, some viewers stay skeptical, regardless of what actually changes on camera. Step back from the personalities involved for a second, and there's a real lesson in this for anyone building a media brand around proximity to volatile, real-world situations for content. It can absolutely generate attention in the short term, but it comes with genuine downstream costs: legal exposure, safety incidents, guest turnover through arrests and worse, and eventually a ceiling on what that content can actually convert into sustainable business, like ticket sales or brand partnerships that don't want to be associated with that risk.
Adam22's specific situation is just a very public, very measurable example of that ceiling showing up all at once in a single number that was impossible to spin. So that's the full breakdown. What actually happened with the live show, why the pivot conversation is getting so much pushback, and what it says about where this corner of the podcasting world is heading. What's your take? Genuine wake-up call or just damage control after a bad number went public? Drop it in the comments. Like the video if this breakdown actually cleared things up for you, subscribe for the next update if this keeps developing, and I'll see you in the next one.